Call to order this meeting of the Wauwatosa School Board. It is October 14th at 7 p.m. We are in the Administration Building Boardroom, lower level. We are going to bring us back into session. We were recessed. Let's begin with a moment of silent reflection. All right, now the agenda says we'll call the roll, so we'll follow the agenda. We'll call the roll again. Mrs. Galante, please.
Mrs. Fee? Here. Mr. Giroux?
Here.
Mr. Croner?
Here.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Here.
Mrs. Randall?
Here.
Mrs. Rios?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. Is there anyone present who would like to comment on a non-agenda item? Seeing no one, we will move to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mrs. Randall, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Giroux, thank you. Is there any discussion of the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the consent agenda? There's no public comment, so Mrs. Galante, please will you call the roll?
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. We'll move to action items, human resources. Mr. Giroux, will you please read the action item?
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Salary increases for administrative assistants, educational assistants, buildings and grounds employees, food service employees, select employees, and administrators. It is recommended that the school board approve salary increases for the following employee groups effective July 1st, 2013, as presented in the preceding executive session. For administrative assistants, 2% wage rate increase at a cost of $35,324, and authorization of regular step increases during the 2013-2014 school year on employees' anniversary date at a cost of $26,074. For educational assistants, 2% wage increase at a cost of $45,276, and authorization for irregular step increases during the 2013-2014 school year on the employee's anniversary date at a cost of $13,754. For buildings and grounds employees, 2% wage increase for maintenance employees at a cost of $17,639. 1% wage increase for custodial and other buildings and grounds employees at a cost of $24,230. Authorization for regular step increases during the 2013-2014 school year on the employee's anniversary date at a cost of $12,954. For food service employees, 1% wage increase for food service employees at a cost of $3,259. For select employees, 2% wage increase at a cost of $34,032, and authorization for regular step increases during the 2013-2014 school year on the employee's anniversary date at a cost of $9,930. For administrators, 2% wage increase at a cost of $65,976, and I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Giroux. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kroner. Okay, is there any board question or comment, or would administration wish to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to briefly touch on a couple of points here. Generally, this is an across-the-board 2% for the remaining groups. I know the teachers were approved at the last board meeting. There are a couple of groups that are 1%, and I did want to address that. We certainly are concerned that all of our employee groups are getting wage increases this year, but for those two particular groups, they were their current wage rates are slightly above the market. I shouldn't say slightly; they're above the market average, and we want to make sure that they're not increasing out of line with the marketplace in the area. But we did still feel that it was very important that we were able to give every group, even those groups, a wage increase. So you do see a 1% recommendation for those groups. I think the other point of clarification was in terms of the administrators' salaries. That is a total group for all of our administrators, including the superintendent, and distribution will be determined at a future meeting, I think based on a closed session in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chanin. Is there any board question or comment? All right, seeing none, is there any community comment? There's no community comment, so Mrs. Galante, please, we will call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. We have a resolution regarding collaboration with UW-Milwaukee and the Forest Exploration Center. It's printed on the agenda. We haven't noted here a suggested board member, a suggested board member to read the motion. Is there any discussion? Well, we don't have a motion on the floor, so we should, let me see. Mr. Croner, please, would you be willing to read this motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you. I move to adopt the resolution regarding collaboration with UW-Milwaukee and the Forest Exploration Center to open a charter school in Wauwatosa as follows. Whereas the Wauwatosa School Board continuously seeks new opportunities for the education of its students, and whereas the Wauwatosa School Board acknowledges that providing these opportunities for students must be done in a fiscally responsible manner that does not harm the ability of the district to provide high-quality educational opportunities for all of its students. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the school board encourages the superintendent to explore a possible governance agreement for the University Lab School that would include the Wauwatosa School District. This agreement shall provide meaningful educational opportunities for students of the Wauwatosa School District and preserve the financial stability of the district. And I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Croner. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Giroux, thank you. Now, the purpose of this was to bring clarity to the, and certainty to the board's voice on Dr. Ertl's activities here. As it says in the written notice for this meeting, to provide a clear statement of the position of the board related to the district's collaboration with UW-Milwaukee and the Forest Exploration Center's proposal to open a charter school in Wauwatosa. So we now do have the motion made. Is there any board comment or discussion with respect to this?
Was Dr. Ertl going to present something?
Well, Dr. Ertl, if you wish to, certainly go ahead. This was actually initiated by me. I believe that, so if you wish to say something first, otherwise I can say something as well.
Then I'll put that in the form of a question. I was under the assumption that we were going to hear what that end product might look like.
Sure. Let me kind of go back and how we got to this point where we're sitting here, I guess, is this goes back, I think everybody knows, a year and a half where we had a discussion and the board approved the charter school planning grant. Fast forward, a lot of things have changed. We're in a lot of different places. There's been legislative changes. There's been changes in location. We're at a situation now where the city is discussing this issue as well. There's a TIF that relates to this situation, relates to the school, relates to the Mandel apartment complex and the Eschweiler buildings. And once the legislation passed, have been discussions with the school district involved, with UWM and with the Forest Exploration Center and with the city. Where we're at right now, and the reason that I would like to see this approved is, I think we're in a situation where I would like to be able to continue those conversations and be able to get in the room with the FEC and with UWM and try to create some type of agreement that is going to be beneficial or not detrimental to the school district. I've been kind of trying to operate in many different ways in these discussions, trying to figure out where we're at. And I think right now, it's probably as clear as it has been since that legislation passed to allow the chartering authority for UWM to have the chartering authority in Milwaukee County outside of the city of Milwaukee. With the city looking at putting an amendment into the TIF that protects the school district's interests. In other words, they are looking to include language in the TIF that says the FEC must come up with an agreement that's acceptable to the school district with the school district. So in other words, the school district being the school board, the agreement would have to be approved by the school board for our involvement and for the involvement, whether or not it involves our students, but our involvement as a school district. And obviously, the intent would be to have our students have that opportunity as well. Absent that agreement and the school moving forward, I think is a real negative to our school district. My goal in this whole process would be to sit down, try to come up with some type of agreement where our students that have an interest in attending this school can attend this school, and there's no negative financial impact to the district. Remember, we lose a student, a resident student goes to a private school or parochial school, that's $11,000 worth of revenue cap authority, roughly $6,000 worth of aid to the school district. That's gone. What I would like to be able to do is try to look at some type of agreement, just from the financial aspect of making sure our kids can attend that school that want to, and we don't lose the financial stability that we have in the district right now, so trying to work through some type of agreement with them. The governance piece is an additional piece, and how the school is governed, I think, could be a model. I look at it and say maybe it's possible we can come up with some type of agreement that could be replicated. I don't think this is the last UWM charter school that's going to be put in place in one of the 5 counties where actually 32% of the students in the state of Wisconsin attend and have the ability to attend UWM charter schools. I envision in the future those schools are going to open in other school districts as well, and if we can come up with some kind of interagency agreement that protects the interests of the school districts, it might make it much more easy for UWM to move down that path and much more easy for school districts to work with UWM in the development of schools. So I look at it as a no-lose proposition. If we go into it, we try to come to an agreement, we can't. At least we made the attempt to try to get to some point where it's acceptable for the city and for the FEC and for Mandel to move forward. If we don't come to an agreement, my understanding is in the language in the TIF that they would go to a Plan B, which does not involve the school, but involves the administration building and then walled gardens of the Eschweiler buildings. But I don't think that's something the school board needs to be concerned with, is the Plan B. But so that's how I see this playing out. And that my hope is that we can come to some type of agreement for the future for this school.
Now, I'd also, I have a little bit more of an expansive view of the meaning of this, in that under the TIF agreement, as is proposed, the FEC will have 1 year, basically, to raise the money to have an operation in the Eschweiler buildings, and they need money additional money to do that because of the cost of bringing those buildings to a state where students can be educated in them. If at the end of that 1 year, the money is not raised by the FEC and the FEC is not in a position to participate in the Eschweiler buildings, then the city has what has been informally called the Plan B, which would have the Mandel Group saving one of the buildings, and the other buildings would become walled gardens. Now, even with a Plan B, the FEC may not have a place there because they didn't raise the money. However, UW Milwaukee still will be there, and there still will be opportunities for some kind of arrangement between our school district and UW. So I see this as authorizing the pursuit of an agreement with respect to the Plan A, but similarly, we don't want to, hinge all the opportunities for our students on the county ground vision on just what the FEC is capable of doing. I have no doubt there are a lot of other innovative things that could be done there involving UW Milwaukee and the Wauwatosa School District that Dr. Ertl and UW could figure out for us. So I'm going to vote yes for this on the idea that there's a good faith effort for Plan A to succeed, but if Plan A doesn't succeed, I'd like us to be involved for a Plan B as well. The reasoning for that, for the Plan A, is that what Dennis McBride made a proposal to amend the TIF agreement structure so that we would need operational agreement by the school district. That essentially means that the TIF money, which is taxpayer structured funding, will have the school district as a gatekeeper, as an overseer for how an educational operation would benefit from that money. And I believe that is our role as the public school district in the city of Wauwatosa, that it's our role to watch over how local taxpayer dollars contribute to education. Then also, there is the strategic direction that is being pursued there on the county grounds, a lot of exciting things happening, and it is really an expansion of Wauwatosa, and I believe the Wauwatosa schools should participate in an expansion of Wauwatosa. We operate in every other neighborhood and region of the city. I believe strategically we need to assume responsibility for operating there as well if there's something that makes sense. So that's my reasons for bringing this forward. Mrs. Rios?
Yeah, so I met with Dr. Ertl about this, and this is the first time that I'm hearing from you the point of if we go to Plan B, then there's options for other opportunities just with UWM. So is it, and Dr. Ertl, maybe this is a question for you, is it more the school district pursuing this, or are you anticipating, where is this coming from? Because it's the first time I've heard about that.
If I may, I don't see that it's a Plan A or a Plan B. If Plan A succeeds, the idea that there would be a second type of school there of a science focus, for example, in the healthcare area, would seem to make a lot of sense over the long term. So I take a very expansively strategic look at believing we don't know what the future could hold, and we shouldn't limit ourselves. We aren't agreeing to a specific construct, a specific program, a specific plan. We're, speaking as one, if we support this, to send Dr. Ertl to do that kind of planning work for us.
Right, but it seems like there are a lot of unknowns here, and to say that we just agree I don't feel good saying that I agree, because the one reason I would agree would be to protect the financial situation of the district, where it would be that if now the charter school is not part of the Wauwatosa School District and we lose that aid from the state, that would be the one reason I would support this. But I do not support this in terms of just being one more charter school that has alternative education forms, where I think we could be looking across across all our schools to incorporate this. And so I'm coming from two different, when I met with you, Dr. Erdl, you assured me that what you're looking out for is the financial security of the district.
Correct.
And now I'm kind of getting a different,
I guess I would, let me talk a little bit about the relationship with UWM, and I look at it even more globally with UWM, and it's really about a relationship. The Wauwatosa School District's going to be around. UW-Milwaukee is going to be in Wauwatosa. I look at it and say, we need to develop a stronger relationship and continue to build that relationship. We may have, it doesn't necessarily mean, one of the conversations we've had with UWM at a meeting down there was, we need to start a better pipeline of student teachers from UWM, student teaching in our schools. So we're looking at just more than just the county grounds with UWM. I'm looking and saying, how can they help with our STEM programs in our high school? What can they offer there? They're right here in our neighborhood. How
Right.
can we do those kind of partnerships? So for me is to develop and maintain that relationship with UWM, because that's going to be there whether this school goes or not. We're both going to be here, and we need to work together, because I think it could be a huge partnership for our entire school.
and
district.
I agree with those examples of utilizing what they have across all our schools, but, that's,
No, if I may say, assuming success of Plan A, a second initiative, there's nothing that says that has to be a charter school. It could be a public school. It could be some sort of community learning center. There are many, many things that, visionary people, putting their heads together, looking at needs of our kids and of our community. There's many initiatives that could be taken on. I just want to keep the door open for other initiatives as well if Dr. Erdl sees opportunities. So it's definitely not to say we want to put up a second charter school for Plan B. Definitely not. There's, no intent to have a charter school or to not have a charter school for any potential other initiative, whether it's a Plan B or a second initiative. We are in the unexpected position of the fact that Wauwatosa is growing when we thought we were landlocked with no opportunities to grow.
thank you.
Mr. Croner.
I want to bring us back to the resolution, because I think 90% of what we've been talking about are outside the scope of the resolution and are confusing things. The purpose of the resolution was to clarify the position of the school board, and the position of the school board to encourage Dr. Erdl to explore governance model for the university lab school that includes the Wauwatosa School District. That's all. And no other plans are implied or should be implied in the statement. I mean, it's a very positive statement, and it should be greeted with enthusiasm by those that are supporting this process. The only other thing I want to say about this is that this is not a new position for the board, that we didn't just meet recently and decide that we should support this position. Shortly after the legislation was passed that gave UWM authority to open charter schools in Milwaukee County and surrounding counties, the board encouraged Dr. Erdl to go through this very process to seek out the partners involved in the school and to see if an agreement could be reached. And that, as far as I know, has been the board's position all summer. And I've heard that there might have been some confusion about that. So this really is just restating what has been a firm position by the board to encourage Dr. Erdl to explore possibilities for shared governance structures. So I think we need to stick to the main focus and make sure that message gets out.
Thank you, Mr. Croner. Mrs. Fee?
Thank you. I've gone back and forth on this, and I won't trouble all of you with my convoluted thinking over the weekend. But I've come down to, I believe, unless something changes my mind here tonight, that I'm going to vote in support of this. But I do think I need to say that it isn't because I find that, based on all the information, that the University Lab School will be a benefit to the district. I read the 240-page document, listened carefully to the presentation last week, and I find it hard to find evidence that it will actually benefit the district as a whole. But I do think it's important that we, as a board, protect the district's interests, and the best way to do that is to have a seat at the table. So I can support this resolution as it's written in order to protect the district's interests. I do have some concerns if there's a feeling that the vote tonight goes beyond the language of the resolution, because it's very specific about University Lab School. And I think that if the discussions go beyond that, a report should come back to the board so we can decide what our position would be on those other discussions.
Noted. Mrs. Randall?
Well, follow up to Mrs. Fee. Your discussion did indicate that we would seek something with UWM if this fails, but that is not in the resolution. So that's a question. My other question is, there is going to be a amendment crafted, I believe, by the city defining, maybe defining is not the word, mandating that the FEC and the Wauwatosa School District enter an agreement. That was the original wording. I don't know how that amendment fits with this resolution. In other words, if we vote no tonight, tomorrow night, they approve the TIF, and then that goes to the development committee to create this language. I mean, because the committee approved it, we're doing this backwards. The city approved it first. So I don't know what the relationship is between our resolution and the amendment that the city is crafting, or who's crafting it, and what we'll have to say about it. That's one piece of it. But primarily what Mrs. Fee brought up and Mrs. Rios, this says only the University Lab School, and every time we've talked about this, everybody, well, Dr. Ertl, you have said the goal is to keep a working relationship with UWM. But that doesn't say that here.
And I guess in my comments, this is very specific. My comments are in context of the overall picture. And I think you point out good points that that's not what the board is being asked to vote on. I guess I'm talking more globally about the future as I see it. And kind of that relationship with UWM. Does this have any impact on that? If the board votes no on this, am I going to say, well, we're done with UWM? No, I think that's just the context surrounding all of my discussions and where this has gone. Originally UWM wasn't involved in this whole process, and without talking any more about UWM and trying to keep the focus on this, you're correct. That does not play into it. As far as the city, I don't know what route they would take if the board voted no to not support my efforts in trying to get to an agreement. I would imagine that amendment that they're looking at would have to change, because it may just either let the school go forward because the school district doesn't want to be a partner, or they say, no, you go to Plan B. I certainly can't speak for the city and what their intentions would be if this was not approved.
I'll comment on that.
I got a question.
Yes, Mr. Droz, please, go ahead.
Is UWM the chartering body?
Yes.
So there's no way the Wauwatosa School District can be convoluted into being that chartered body?
I don't think to say there's no way. I think there's always a way. Under current legislation, no, there is not.
So they'll either be an instrumentality or a non-instrumentality of UWM.
They would be a 2R charter school, which is it's more of an independent charter school.
Non-instrumentality?
It's very similar, yes.
And your governance, you're going to negotiate the governance of that. So it's something unique to any charter school that's been formed so far in the state.
That
It's
has
really
been,
not one or the other. It's going to be some type of a hybrid incorporating us as the third entity.
right, and there's been some discussions with DPI and with legislators about intergovernmental agreements and what they could look like, and they would be new. It would be something that has not been
Okay.
done before.
Yeah, well, I think this speaks to that, giving you that authority to negotiate that governance model. If I'm reading it right, I think that's what it says.
Okay. So my comment, the answer to some of the concerns is this, that I don't know of anybody who would voluntarily choose the road that was taken to get us to this point tonight. There is a lot of twists and turns and winding around and difficulties along the way. But a lot of effort has been exerted to try to get the school district to a position where we are participating. And after people have gone to all of that effort, people in the school district, myself, Dr. Ertl, people from the city, trying to care about the interests of the school district. If we vote no tonight and we reject this resolution, my opinion is that we are pretty much done for as far as participating on the county grounds. And because, if we vote yes, we are not agreeing to a specific proposal. We are encouraging the superintendent to go and participate in good faith in the best interests of the school district, and therefore in the best interests of the city as well, because the school district and the city really, as a community, we're one and the same. We're all in this together. So that's how I look at it. Yes means we can go and participate. Maybe there'll be a place for our kids. No means we're pretty much out of the picture. Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Randall, please.
Excuse me, I want to put an amendment out there just because I want to have the discussion. And that would be at the end of the last provision. And it would add the words, "at no cost," after meaningful education opportunities for students of the Wauwatosa School District. Following that, "at no cost," and preserve the financial stability of the district.
So read the last two lines again as you would craft them.
It'd just be the last line. "This agreement shall provide meaningful educational opportunities for students of the Wauwatosa School District at no cost and preserve the financial stability of the district at no cost to them."
Are you making a motion?
I am.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rios. Discussion on the motion.
Well, my reason for bringing it up is I think it's been articulated that that's your goal.
Yeah,
Wait a minute, please. No cost? What does that mean? What does no cost mean? Does that mean free? What are you saying with that?
I'm saying, yes, that it would be like any of our other charter schools.
But you didn't say that. You said at no cost, which I interpret as meaning we send our kids there for free, and we don't have to expend any monies at all.
Okay, in my discussions with Dr. Ertl, I believe that, Dr. Ertl, you said you would hope to have them attend at no cost?
it's one of the proposals that we had put out there. I look at just at one level of our costs when we, just for the staffing model, in essence of between the middle school and high school. The middle school, we staff at 25.5 and the high school at 26.5. So if you say 26 students and the cost of a teacher, I guess that is, if we had 26 students leave the district, that's what our savings would be and could be invested. The opposite side of that is, would there be does by saying absolutely no cost, does that close the door? I guess my goal is to protect the financial interests of the district. I want our students to be able to attend and not have money taken away from the rest of our students. Does that bring clarity? At no cost. I'm trying to think how that. I think if the
Yeah,
intent is
I
the same.
threw it out there to get the discussion going.
Yeah.
So we enter into this governance with UWM, FEC, and us, right? We're saying that Plan A works.
Right.
Okay. So now we have this three-part governance model. Okay, and so, they're gonna, I guess it's gonna depend on what they're gonna charge. But I think you had said you wanted access for our students. So I guess, yeah, I mean, I don't know if the question is for the entire district or for the student. I don't know.
And I think the real challenge is how do you look at costs and services for the school, and how do you create something in interagency agreements that there's not a negative financial impact to
Right.
the district. It might not be dollars and cents, it might be services, it might be something else. Some of the discussions I've had with Danny Goldberg, you know, the concept was, can we be creative with the governance model so we can get to the point where we're not shifting. My biggest concern is that we don't count students. I mean, we have, our marketing committee is geared toward increasing resident enrollment. We monitor resident enrollment. It's gone up over the past 5 years. To say, let's not worry about let's have 30 residents leave the district and not worry about that from a financial piece, I think is real problematic. If it can be done without a negative financial impact, and that's where I look at it and say, I rely on John Mack in our discussions of what does that look like and how is it not negative to the school district. And there may be costs going out, something, and you know, I'm not being clear.
No, I know. This
It's
is
hard
all
to-
in
it's
the
hard to say
abstract.
no
I get
cost,
that.
right.
I get that. I'm just, you know, you gotta have a little patience, Mr. Meyer. This is all reactive.
I
you know,
haven't,
And we are not used to operating in a reactive manner.
I
We're used to
haven't
leading.
said anything, and to suggest
So,
that I'm not patient suggests that I'm interrupting you. I'm being very politely patient
Okay,
while waiting for you to finish, and then I'll have some things to say.
okay. I'm trying to get it more specific for our financial protection. So maybe the motion should have been, instead of at no cost, should be for students of the Wauwatosa School District without loss of state aid revenue.
Well, it's too late now because you made the motion and you have a second. So if you aren't gonna think through it before you make the motion, then you can ask Mrs. Rios to withdraw the motion, the second, and then you can withdraw your motion. And maybe you'd want to discuss this with the board before you make your motion. That would be a patient approach.
No, that, you can't do that. Mrs. Rios, would you withdraw your second?
Yes.
May I withdraw my motion?
All right.
I'd like to try a different amendment.
Would you like to discuss this before you make the motion, or are you wanting to make the
Sure.
motion right away?
I thought, okay. So I would like to make our financial interest more specific in the wording here, if that's possible. And one way that it might be possible would be to refer specifically to state aid. Revenue generated per student, whatever.
I wouldn't go with state aid because that's very
Well,
low.
Mr. Mack would probably know, but whatever we call the amount of money we get per student.
You know, Mr. Croner, please.
I just want to comment, the last two sentences, we're entering into uncharted territory, so to speak. We don't know what this agreement is going to look like. The intent of this is to provide a positive push to the process. And so I would like to really just focus on what we've written. And because when it was drafted, I thought it was representative of the current board policy, but things seem a little more complicated at the moment. The last two sentences were providing meaningful educational opportunities for students and preserving the financial stability of the district were meant to give the greatest possible leeway to Dr. Ertl and the others involved in negotiations, so that if it were possible to come up with a model that was win-win-win for everybody, that would fit under the board's goal. And I think the more that we put definitions in here, we're restricting the negotiation process and not giving the people that are involved the greatest latitude which they need to come up with something positive for everybody. So I would prefer that we just leave the wording as is. Preserving the financial stability of the district is a very specific language that Dr. Ertl takes very seriously, and I'm confident that he'll come up, if he comes up with something to propose to the board, it will be something that he believes is beneficial to the district. So I think it was drafted to give the most leeway in the negotiations to come up with something positive, and I really think we should just leave it as is and try to give it a positive send-off.
I am trying to be positive. I'm also trying to be very mindful of our stewardship of the taxpayers' money.
Mr. Droz, please.
If you read the first sentence of that paragraph, therefore it is hereby resolved that the school board encourages the superintendent to explore a possible governance agreement. That's all we're doing. We're trying to come up with something here that's not been done before. We're trying to give people as much latitude as we can, but we're also stating that we want to preserve the financial, just like Mr. Croner said. I think if you change this, you take away the ability to negotiate. And without the ability to negotiate, we aren't getting anywhere. And just because Phil negotiates something, we still have to approve it. So I think we gotta kind of take a little leap here. If we're gonna do this, this is, I think, the best way to do it.
And I agree with what Mr. Croner said, and I agree with what Mr. Droz said, and also be mindful, we are sending highly qualified financial professionals and attorneys into the room with Dr. Ertl. And that's their job, is to concern themselves with these things. You know, Dr. Ertl's thrust is the educational opportunity, but we send experts with him to safeguard these very things.
Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that. What about my question about the city amendment and this proposal? How did they?
Well, we aren't the city, so, I mean, I know that's stating the obvious, but we can only control what we say and what we resolve to do. And obviously, there's a relationship here, and we're trying to authorize a participation in exploration of the future of that relationship. You know, the city, the finance committee, they voted last week, and they didn't know exactly what we were going to do tonight either. So there's going to have to be some mutual trust in order for this to move forward, unless, you know, there's no way to have a joint meeting of all of us and vote all together at the same time. I think everybody can see the spirit of what's going on, to try to put the school district in a position to participate with the city in these activities.
Okay. I just need to understand if there's clear language being drafted by the city's attorneys that says there's a condition that the school district has to enter into an agreement with the FEC. You know, granted, it's not our language, but what does it mean if they're drafting it?
The reality is, they may meet tomorrow night and they may not pass it. They may not include it. Is it being drafted and is it being worked on from what I understand in my discussions? Yes. But I do think, we don't know. I mean, I don't know that we can rely that it's gonna actually go through committee and go through city council. It has been proposed. I don't know. I haven't seen the exact language and haven't been able to get the exact language, and I think they're gonna be working on it and drafting it even in committee tomorrow night. But the intent is to have that amendment that protects the school district and puts the school district in a position where we need to work to come up with an agreement.
I mean, it just strikes me that that amendment is very specific, as it was proposed last week. Said that the district and the FEC have to come to an agreement. And ours is advisory or whatever, so.
Well, they're specific because they're actually committing disposition of funds, specific dollar amounts. And I don't know that disposition of funds was the correct phrase, but they have real money in the agreement, and we only have authorization to participate in discussions. So they need to be more specific than us. Mrs. Mufeld, please.
Thank you. I spoke quite a bit at our last meeting in support of trying to develop a partnership. I think that this resolution adequately conveys our interests. It also is broad enough to allow us to participate in that negotiation. So I will approve this resolution as it is stated.
Okay, so do you wish to make a motion, Mrs. Randall?
No, I don't, thank you.
All right. Is there any more board question or comment? Is there any community comment at this time? Seeing none, Mrs. Galante, please will you call the roll?
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes,
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Superintendent's report, the tentative board agenda items. This was included in your board packet. This was developed by Dr. Erdl. My input was the request that there be the references to the district development plans in the discussion report topic heading, so we know where in the development plan document and from which year we were addressing the report. So, Dr. Earl, would you like to comment on in any way?
Yes, this is a result that came out of the in-service meeting and the suggestion or recommendation to put this together and bring it to the board. Mrs. Galante and I have, and the board president in the past, have always worked through a tentative calendar, and I think the word tentative is important to understand, because as we go through, for example, tonight we were slating to have the elementary Spanish presentation, but the person that would be one of the leads on that presentation is unable to be here. I believe she's out of town. But so different things come up where we do have to move things around, but I think it's important that we put it on and say that these are the things we are going to report on. This calendar right here is more aggressive, not aggressive, more extensive than we've ever had for reports and really relating things to the DDP. I know we put out the DDP at the end of the year, the results of it, of how well we did. There's been suggestions in the past to say, can we get more in-depth with some of those things, and I think that's what this is intending to do, is to put more in-depth discussion behind different initiatives, projects, goals, and initiatives from the district development plan. I think as we go through the year, there'll be additional things that would be added to this, as well as things change when we come up, and that is under policy, the board president, and working in collaboration with the superintendent to put together the agendas. But I think this is a good roadmap. I think there is, if not all of our initiatives, certainly the goals are represented on here, but a majority of the initiatives that, certainly all of them that would involve board approval. In addition, many that do not require board approval, but I think it's important that we report out and share with the board more in depth than we have in the past on goals and initiatives from the district development plan.
And Dr. Earl and I have discussed as well that we would like to expand the format of the reports to include participation and feedback from teachers and parents and students where appropriate. Is that, do you envision that for example, for the any of these upcoming reports?
We have discussed it at our directors meeting, and we'll have every intention to bring parents and students and teachers. I think the teachers are certainly involved in the Spanish world language program, and we'll be here presenting. And we're looking for parents and students that have been impacted as well, and we have some videos that were done from Madison School on the program through Milwaukee Public TV. I think it's Milwaukee Public TV. Is that who did that? Yeah. So, yes, to answer your question.
Good, good. And I'll also note that, you know, I want to give credit to the work by Mrs. Mufeld and the advisor we brought in, Bill Hughes. Certainly, there was this expanded format is one of the, their work was a contributor to this expanded format. And then the board, in conversation in other meetings, wanted to embrace, a better event calendar. So a lot of people have participated in this. Is there any board question or comment or suggestions with regard to this? Is there anything big that you feel we should include that maybe isn't listed in here, for example? Mrs. Randall?
No, nothing to add or change, but I just wanted to say, I thought I recalled some discussion about being specific in identifying what information we would like included in the reports. Because I think we had talked about previously, we would get a report and it wasn't meeting people's.
As far as the data,
Yeah.
what
say
are
if we're
the
gonna
indicators? What
yeah.
are the indicators of success and things like such as
Yeah,
that?
if we're gonna have a report on Spanish, what is it we want to know in that report?
Mrs. Mufeld, you wanted to comment?
Sure, I'll try to answer your question, but comment, that is one of the discussions in our next in-service.
Oh, okay.
It's very specific to
Okay,
that.
perfect, thank you.
Mr. Croner, please.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. I made a number of suggestions for the agenda at the last meeting, and a number of them aren't on the agenda, and I realize upon reflection that several of my suggestions aren't necessarily appropriate for the agenda, so I won't pursue those. But a couple of them I think are really important, and I kept those after comparing the district development plan to the agenda. And so my suggestions have to do with items that are specifically on the district development plan but not on the agenda. First off, is one of the most important things to me is our district focus is reading. And we even say that grade level and beyond literacy is critical to success for all students. But neither last year, this year, or even on this agenda do we have a report on the reading programs. So I would like to suggest again that we have a couple of different reports. One on the primary reading program, one how students are doing at the secondary level, and primarily that one I think is critical because from 6th grade through 8th grade, student reading ability declines, and it's been consistent for a number of years, and it's not unique to our district, but it's something that happens at that level. And I think those reports should include some information about the interventions that we're using and how they're working with the kids. And I know a lot of information relating to this was in the district development plan report from last year, but we've not ever had it presented at a meeting. So I think that adding at some point in the year a report or two on the district reading program so the public can see what we're doing, what's really working well, what might not be working as well that we need to focus on and get that information out. So that's one suggestion. And as before, I'm still unclear about the process for this. I mentioned this before and the suggestions were heard and then didn't show up anywhere, so I have a feeling I'm mentioning it again and they will not show up anywhere. So how is this being decided, that these suggestions that we have, whether they will be included or not?
Dr. Ertl, what was your criteria for? I'll note that at the last meeting where I chaired it on this topic, it was asked how this calendar would be set, and I said it would be set by the superintendent with the qualification that things would have to follow the district development plan. And that is in fact how it was done. It was set by the superintendent with my request that there be references to the current and past district development plan items that we were reporting on. So beyond that, Dr. Earle, what was your thought process for including or not including items on this calendar?
It's really things from the district development plan and trying to incorporate everything. I certainly don't have a problem reporting on, having us do a report on reading. I'm very proud of what's going on with reading in our district. I think we need to refine what it is at the next in-service, and maybe we spend the whole time talking about reading, but it's huge to say, let's have a report on reading. I got to make sure I know what you want, because we could report on reading in the content areas. We could report, I mean, it's pretty expansive, and to say, let's just report on reading, that's where I think it would be helpful to have that conversation and saying, as a board, what do you want to know about reading, and what do you want presented? And that would help us versus just, I mean, because it's huge. And we could do a report, and we could target something, and it just might not be anything that you're interested in knowing about, or it might not be relevant to what you're thinking. So I think certainly I would agree. I think it's critical, and I'm pretty excited about what we are doing, and it would be a good opportunity to share that too. So if I would suggest that we talk about it at the next, which is coming up. Milfeld, do you know that meeting? Or Connie, do you know when that is? The next in-service? That's this month.
The 22nd.
22nd. It's on your calendar.
It's right in front of my face.
Mrs. Neufeld, you'll be chairing the meeting. I cannot attend. So are you willing to take this on?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Croner, your point is well taken. The superintendent agrees. Mrs. Neufeld will address it with Mr. Hughes to put specifics to your request in a thoughtful conversation. Yes.
I would like to comment. When I make these requests, it's not what I want to know. Okay, it's me representing the citizens of Wauwatosa, and we have a reading program in the district, and we've made great strides in the reading program since I joined the board, and we should be proud of it. But it might not be perfect, and we shouldn't be afraid to find that out if that's true in some cases, in little niches here or there. And so this is not what I want to know. It's to demonstrate and to show to the citizens of Wauwatosa what's going on in the schools. I think that's one of the roles of the school board. So I'm not asking this because I have a checklist at home and I'm trying to find out what are they doing here, what are they doing there. I think it's the role of the school board to have reports presented that accurately reflect what's going on in the district so that the citizens of Wauwatosa can stay up to date and know what the quality of the programs that we're producing. So I have very good intentions when I ask these things, and it's mainly for informational value for the citizens of the district so they understand the quality of the programs that we're producing. Okay, now I have a couple other requests.
Well, if I may say, I do use checklists while I'm representing the citizens of Wauwatosa. So whether you have a checklist or not, the suggestion is well taken, and it's a good suggestion. Yes, you have other suggestions, Mr. Cronin?
Just a few other things, and I had a lot checked actually here that I'm not going to mention tonight. But we did say that that major initiatives should have follow-up reports. This is one thing we agreed on at our in-service recently. And one thing I noticed that's not on here is a report on the middle school STEM program, where we created houses that are focused on the STEM model. And I think we should have a report on that. It's an interesting concept. It might be going really, really well. I haven't heard, and I think the citizens might be curious to know what's the enrollment like, what projects are they doing, how are the students doing, do they enjoy it, do the parents like it? I mean, that's just something we need to get out to the public. The other one that I was curious about was bring your own technology, an update for that later this year. That was a pretty major initiative, and I'm just curious to see if that's working well in the schools. Parents might want to know, are the kids making use of their equipment? Is it causing problems? Is it disrupting learning? Or is it benefiting learning? Just those kinds of questions. And I'm going to go back to a program from last year just because I think it's really important, evaluation of that 8th period that we had in the middle schools last year that was put in place to try to help students achieve more, either learn something in a remedial way or maybe to do advanced work. And, we didn't continue with that for various reasons, but I think we should at least have a report on that program and what it was meant to do and what worked well and what didn't work well, and what did we learn from that. I think as a school district, we can't shy away from things that didn't go well. We can't not talk about things that didn't go the way we planned. I think we can learn an awful lot, by maybe even more, from the programs that didn't turn out the way we had intended, because we learn from those and we move forward. So I really would like to see a presentation on that, the thoughts behind that 8th period that was at the middle school last year, and what did we learn from that we might actually be using now to help students learn more. So those would be the main topics in the agenda that I didn't see that relate to the district development plan.
Who's shying away? Are you shy, Mr. Croner? I didn't perceive anybody was shy on this board. So I'm not sure what your meaning is there. So duly noted, we'll take these on and see what can be done. Certainly we might hit all of them, but we might not, depending upon what is practical on the calendar. And Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Well, and this is something that I'm hoping we can get to also in our discussion on the 22nd. And, when I hear middle school 8th period, I think enrichment intervention, and then I think bigger. And I say, well, that's a commitment that we made to the students. And that was just one mechanism that we were going to use for that. As a district, what are we doing across the district for those sorts of, for that initiative, if you want to put it that way, or our goal, which aligns with the district development plan. So I am looking at larger key initiative topics that I think definitely could be fit into the calendar, and those can be identified on a more broader district level, which coincides with our district development plan, rather than focusing on a particular program in one level of our system. So that's where I see the discussion going, and so I'm excited for it. One thing that I have a question on is, this is a tentative agenda, and I know that it was intended to be published out to the community so that they could know what we're reviewing, and they could attend meetings, of course, that would be of interest to them. But I know things change. Sometimes we might have to move dates for some reason. How are we going to process that? How are we going to make that more fluid and explain to the community that this is tentative, and how do we update them on our schedule and what things are going to be discussed with a little bit of a longer lead time than when we publish our specific agenda?
Well, we will publish this. And then we really need people to watch the notices. And we have a responsibility, I think, as a board, that when Dr. Ertl knows that a particular planned date is not going to work out, that we tell people in a fashion. We could keep this updated on the website, and people are just going to have to watch it, and to see what's the final decision for what goes on the next meeting agenda. We had the desire to have the language report this meeting, and it's moved to next meeting. We will still have it. And we didn't have a bunch of people show up by accident wanting to see a language report tonight, so I guess we were okay. And also just a point of clarification, the middle school 8th period is not an 8-period day. That is use of a term to describe something that is not an 8-period day. It's another concept that was put in place to try to assist the children, and just to put that out there. Okay. All right. Yes, Mrs.
Sorry,
McCoy.
follow-up. So what I'm hoping we can do is somehow have this be more fluid, whether this is posted and updated on a regular basis on the website as we have information available to us. I just don't know how easy that is to do. Because as soon as we can get information out there on the topics we're gonna be discussing out into the community, the better as far, as I'm concerned. Also allowing for flexibility when we have issues that come up that we're going to talk about quickly. Maybe there's something we need to add.
We just need to make sure that we communicate what this is. It's a tentative board agenda item. Whether it's on the website and we put a header or make it very clear, this is tentative, please check board agendas for actual agenda topics. And we can keep this updated and then use it as a guide, but we can find a way to communicate it. It's not gonna be perfect, because people will see this and think it's
Right.
golden, and it's not, even though it says tentative or whatever other word we can use that might explode off the webpage, so it's very clear, but we'll do what we can to make sure it's communicated in a way that's appropriate.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be just a static document and then it's changing all the time. We should have a way or some kind of a mechanism to continually update it.
Fluidity is
Okay,
important.
thank you.
All right. Is there any other board, Mrs. Rios?
Yeah. So I was here for the STEM update, the STEM charter school update, and I'm assuming that the April, is that the Montessori update? Does the Montessori school have one as well? Like a yearly,
No, they're not a charter.
But in
No,
April, we
they're
do
not
have
a-
them on for that.
what?
We do for next April.
Right, so is there a way, what I was left with when STEM presented is, they're doing all these great things, but it's really isolated to that school, right? Is there a way to also introduce a avenue by which what they are doing can be disseminated to the rest of the schools, either by some way to, it seems like we can learn from, one of the missions, it would seem like, of having a charter school in your district is to also have them pilot certain projects, certain initiatives, and then see if you can learn from them and introduce that to the other schools. So could that possibly, and I don't know if this is, the right time to bring it up, but I'm putting it out there to include some sort of,
We'll include that as part of the
yeah,
discussion.
and obviously it probably isn't them that, the representative from the school that's going to be doing that, because it's not really their, I don't know whose responsibility it is, but it would seem like that would be an important piece to tie back to the rest of the schools, that we could be learning.
It's the theoretical basis of charter schools.
Exactly,
When
but
it
there
started,
isn't-
That was the intent. We do a charter school, it's like a lab school. and
Right,
we build out
which
of it.
is what I
It's
thought.
morphed into different things.
But when the STEM school presented, there wasn't that part wasn't discussed, and I think that's a really important part that we're not tapping into.
We are. If
Okay.
they were doing something that was scalably great, that's just a makeup word. But I think you know what I'm getting at. We would be doing it across the district. But there's things to be learned, and that's what we want to make sure, it's going back and forth, and there's a good communication back and forth.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that can be part of the presentation and discussion.
Extendable to other buildings,
Yeah.
scalable to a larger footprint. Yes, Mrs. Randall?
Just to respond a little bit to that, I think Mrs. Casey's response was that they're starting the outdoor classroom and that they're hoping to engage the rest of the district in that. And I was there one day and every class in the school was going out there. So they're starting those things. So, we know that they've got that in mind, but I guess somebody needs to-
I think to make sure that it's a specific thing we're hitting on, and we're at least, it came up because I asked her, and so,
Right, yeah, well, yeah. I think the trigger is what we're trying to figure out, right? How to get it started and when. I think part of it is, you have to respect where they're at in their program. As far as, expecting,
Okay, so
but
are, I think we're getting down into some details about report content that we really wanted to get to in the in-service. Is there any other board comment or question? Any community comment or question? All right, we'll be done with this topic then. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, at 8:11, I'll call for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation and compensation for a statutory exemption to Wisconsin Open Meeting Law, Section 19.85, Paragraph 1, Subparagraph C. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Fee, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Mufeld, thank you. Roll call. Mr. Croner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fee,
Yes.
Mrs. Randall,
Yes.
Mrs. Mufeld,
Yes.
Mrs. Rios,
Yes.
Mr. Giroux,
Yes.
and Mr. Meyer, yes. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll reconvene in executive session.